you can't wait around. You have to be proactive and lift those people around you, because your performance and your financial well-being depends on them, not just on you. So I think when you start to take that outlook, you be much more proactive, and you're thinking about ways that you can impact other people around you. And I think you'll see that this isn't just about only the people, this is about the business, right? This is about profit, loss, top and bottom line in the business. And these all things are connected. And so that's where I would say, take action, treat people well, have some empathy, ask questions, be curious, and focus on building great relationships with the people around you.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. This is your host Neha at peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM, that's specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blogging channel that receives more than 200,000 visitors a year, and we also publish several interviews with well-known names globally every month. We have with us today Jason Treu. Jason is the Chief People Officer at Unstoppable Workplaces and has been focused on helping courageous and ambitious executives, managers, and employees skyrocket their managerial leadership and team building success. For almost a decade, his high-performance programs have been at the top of the coaching and training industry, and very impressively, more than 300,000 employees have received breakthrough changes and results. Jason is the author of the best-selling book Social Wealth, which has more than 130+ five-star reviews on Amazon, along with his culture change and teamwork game, Cards Against Mundanity, that's been used by more than 20,000+ employees. He provides clients with executive coaching, culture change and employee engagement programs, manager and leadership training, team building, conflict resolution services, and keynote speaking. So with that, we're very honored to have you with us today, Jason.
Well, I'm very honored to be with you and to speak to your fantastic audience.
Thank you. So Jason, let's jump right into it. The first question that I want to ask you is, you're the CPO at Unstoppable Workplaces. So could you tell us more about your role and what your company does?
Sure. I go in and help a variety of individuals, from leaders, right, to help them better understand how to run, manage, scale, and grow their organization, and how to work better to develop their talent on their teams, no matter where it sits. I also work with their managers on how to manage the employees, and also the employees how to have great employee experiences, the skill sets they need to be successful, and really what they need to do to interact with clients, partners, and other external audiences. And I do that in a variety of ways. I do some one-on-one coaching. I'll do group coaching with multiple people. And then I do training and workshops with people that are on a larger scale, whether it be, a couple hours, a half day, full day, or multiple days.
Right. That sounds very interesting, Jason. You've mentioned that 2/3 of business issues stems from misunderstandings, miscommunications, unspoken conflicts, negative attitudes, and poor teamwork. So how does one overcome these concerns? And do you believe that technology can, to an extent, help here?
Well, I think it can, obviously, right? Because there's a lot of different channels that people can communicate with. And obviously in remote work now, as more and more people are not working in an office, having electronic channels are ways for people to stay in touch, right? But the challenge is when you don't see people, it's very easy to lose the personal touch with people and their relationships themselves. And at the core of the relationship is building trust. And the problem is that really in business, it's a people problem. It's not necessarily in many instances a business problem about how people get along. And most of the misunderstandings happen because people don't see themselves in other people. They're different than them, right? They're either different because of where they came from, their background, their experiences, their expectations, how they work. And the problem is people really don't communicate these in what they need and how they need them, and have tough conversations with other people on a consistent basis. And they don't form the basis of relationships that allow people to compromise, to not get upset. What they do is harbor the resentment and they let it build up, and then they don't have these conversations with other people. So what you have to do, you have to think to yourself, if I don't build a very high level of trust with all the people on my team, and that also is people outside the organization that you have to work with, similar to the relationships and the amount of trust you have with people that are close in your life, what ends up happening is you don't forgive them, you won't communicate as well, you won't compromise, you won't tell them your preferences, you won't really communicate these things. And so a lot of it is, how do you build a lot more trust? And a lot of that is by understanding people's backgrounds, their experiences, what have happened in their own life, right? And you can do that at this game called Cards Against Mundanity. And essentially there's a card game in the US called Cards Against Humanity, which is sort of a fun game, right, that people play. And it's, people play it everywhere. But what it is it's a question game where you ask people different questions, like, what's the most important lesson you've learned in the last year? If you had to thank one person for helping you become the person you are, who is that person and why, right? What are you most grateful about in your life? And what ends up happening is, when you do this in a group full of people and everyone answers it, the people who you may not get along with that well or think there are a lot of differences, once they start sharing where they've come from, what they've done, you see a lot of yourself in the other person. And then you say to yourself, well, I may have not liked that person as much or thought that much about them or even respected them, but now I understand a lot more about them, and it's much more similar to me than I thought before. And that opens an opportunity to bridge that trust gap and build more for everyone on a team, right? And I would say the other challenge that starts to happen is people don't share how they like their work at all, right? Yeah. And I call these things, you'll find that really, really good managers and leaders will have this in some form. It's called the How to Work With Me manual. And it's just a list of questions that you'd have, like, what are your pet peeves? What ways do you prefer to communicate? If I have something difficult to talk to you about, what's the best way for me to do that with you? And in other questions you'd ask someone, like literally a manual you'd get to put together something complicated in your home, right? It'd be really difficult if someone handed you something super difficult to put together and there was no instruction manual. Well, every person comes with an instruction manual. The problem is that you're not reading it or they're not giving it to you. And when you do that in a group full of people, you can onboard people quickly. You can understand them from different cultures better, from different backgrounds, because you know what to give them. And also, once you do something like that, you're more apt to have a conversation by saying, well, look, you put down that these were your pet peeves, but then when I did this, you got really upset. Well, then that allows you to have a conversation with someone else. So you have to find ways to break down the walls between people, because what people tend to do is they tend to look at the world through their own eyes, right? And they tend to think, well, that person should be acting like me, but that person doesn't see it like that. And so then the miscommunications and misunderstandings start to come up, and then you lower productivity in the workplace because people aren't working together as efficiently and effectively. And there are other things to do as well, but those are two easy ways that you can start bridging the gaps pretty quickly between people, no matter where your team is sitting, how big it is, or anything else.
Yes, exactly. Jason, I feel like a lot of people look for textbook solutions on, how to succeed in life, or for that matter, on anything that they're doing. But like you just mentioned, at the end of the day, unless we understand what's going on in our coworkers' minds, unless we learn to communicate, that's not really going to lead us anywhere. And does that concept also fit into Cards with Mundanity? Could you just speak a bit about that? Because I'm very intrigued to know what the concept behind that is.
Well, the concept behind the game was, all my clients, they have people that are working for them, with them, meaning peers, or people they have to work with externally. And all these challenges come up that are people problems for the most part. Yeah. And part of these were based in the fact that they didn't have either good, very good, or great relationships with them. And so I thought to myself, well, instead of having to solve all the problems every time they come in, there has to be some universal solution that I can give people that they could start to use, and partly people even who weren't my coaching clients that could pick up something, use it, and start to understand the power of empathy, asking questions, getting to know people at a much deeper level in the workplace rather than at a surface level. And so I was researching on how to put this together, and I came across this study by a professor, his name's Arthur Aaron, back in 1997, and he was trying to build close relationships between people. And so he started, one of the premises he had was if people asked vulnerable questions, they would learn about people really quickly. Well, he took graduate students in college, 54 of them, paired them up, and they were complete strangers. Like they knew nothing about them at all. They didn't know their names. And so they sat down and they asked 36 questions over 45 minutes that were pretty vulnerable, both of them, right? So they didn't really share that much information, but enough. And what happened at the end of that is 30% of the people said they created the closest relationship in their lives.
Wow.
Right? In 45 minutes, right? I mean, imagine that. I mean, that means anyone listening to this, if I took you to a video chat with 4 people and asked these questions, right, during these days, you'd walk away with someone you felt really close with and closer than anyone else in your life today, which may seem like really difficult to comprehend, but most people don't know really that much about you when you come down to think about it. And when you start asking really vulnerable questions, like, tell me about the biggest setback you've had in your life in the last 5 years, right? Like if you were to play a superhero on TV, like who would that be and why? And, you know, questions, all a range of questions. There's not that many people who know that other than people that are super close to you. Probably most, I mean, not, and they probably don't even know that.
Probably not even them. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, and when you ask them in a group full of people, I found the power is you start to see that everyone is a lot like you. And there are many similar experiences you never would have thought that the other people have gone through. And you start to feel like you're not alone anymore. And you start to realize the world out there, most of the people out there have a lot in common with you, even if it looks like they don't have anything. And the challenge is you have to ask the questions to get to know them. But what happens is when you do this, it works in your favor to do this because people feel much closer to you, right?
Absolutely.
So just by asking the questions, they feel closer to you, so they'll work better with you. They'll want you to succeed. They'll be more helpful. They'll argue less. They'll communicate better. So there's a lot of incentive to try to do this with people. And you can obviously use this, you know, with their friends or other people as well, right? Outside of work. But for a work setting, it's very easy to use with people, and everyone loves to do it because they get to express who they really are, and they can share it, and people can listen to them. So it's a pretty simple game that people can play, and there's a free version on my website, and there's one on the actual physical cards as well. And it's a really fun process. And, you know, I've had now probably at least 60,000 people use it so far that I know of. There's probably a lot more, and it's worked exceptionally well. And I've done it in, you know, groups of, you know, you can use it one-on-one. It does work one-on-one. The groups is just more helpful to see the application, but I've done it in large companies, small ones, because it can scale as well, meaning that if you do multiple groups of people that aren't even in the same group, if they know that they're doing it, they'll treat each other as though they were in the same group, which is also something I didn't know to start doing it. So if you do this with like multiple hundred of people, or if you're on a video call, as long as everyone knows what they're doing it, they start acting as though those people were in the group, which is the power, I think, in all of this, and the power of belonging, connecting, and having people care to get to know you. And so that's really the basis for doing this. And it helps people significantly, you know, and they have some fun, and people really get to know them. And that also helps in how to communicate with them. And getting out of that, you get close to a certain set of people that you find have very similar backgrounds. So it works on many different levels in organization. And you can use this obviously with clients, with prospects, with partners. And that helps you in a variety of ways as well, trying to build better relationships or trying to, help them do business with you or to keep them over time. So the application is pretty much endless.
Absolutely.
And how you
Yeah. I can imagine that's very impressive, Jason.
well,
Moving on to the next question. So you've worked with some great luminaries like Steve Jobs and Reed Hastings. So in your experience, what does it take to build high performing teams and company cultures that foster communication in order to run a thriving organization?
Well, I think you have to have leaders that obviously have some vision. I think in today's world, you have to have resilience, meaning bouncing back because you're going to have setbacks. I think it's a certain level of empathy with the people around you to understand them. I think you have to have a strong work ethic and drive.
Yeah.
You have to build, teamwork. You have to identify high performing people. You have to get them to work really well. You have to be able to delegate and let go of control and allow people to do the work, right? That's one of the hardest parts for leaders as they start to go, is not to micromanage people, because you have to come up as a leader with great ideas, figure out what the next thing is, bring in new business, whatever it might be in the business itself. And if you're too busy doing the work every day or micromanaging people, you don't have time to do the strategic work, and you end up being less productive and less efficient in a company. And so I think the other thing is they're constantly learning. They're very curious. They get training and development. They ask a lot of questions, right? And I think all of those things are also a key piece of it, because in today's world, the bar has been raised. And you're having to learn more new skills every year. You're having to get better. So if you don't invest in yourself and the people around you, what's going to happen is you're going to see your productivity, efficiency start to go down in everyone in your company, and other companies that are around you will be able to come in and take away parts of your business. And because of the internet now, you don't even know who those people are, because they could be anywhere in the world, no matter where you are, right? So I think you have to look more holistically at your business and your people, and continually ask yourself, like, what can we do as a group to get better? And how effectively as a group are we working together? Because that's really where the challenge comes in, because ultimately this is about scale. It's about building a larger organization, and how do you do that in a very effective way? And it's pretty complicated, but you have to start somewhere. And I think you have to start thinking about, how would those leaders do it? But also you have to think about how they would do it in this new world that we're living in today, because theirs was different than ours is currently. So I think there are new things now that need to be brought into light when you're trying to go through this process.
Yes. And Jason, I think the point that you mentioned about upskilling, and also about realizing that as a leader, you have to let go of certain things. I think there can be a conflict there where, people just don't want to do that because it's sort of difficult to. But I feel like that answer right there is a good reminder for people who are finding it difficult to do that, because I think you just very brilliantly highlighted what lies ahead after doing those things.
Yeah, the problem is with not delegating is the leader can do whatever they're doing extremely well. And the people that are underneath them don't have the experience and don't have the number of times doing whatever it is that they're doing. So they won't be as good. But the leader wasn't that good at it until they did it enough and gained the skills, right? So you have to allow people to develop, get the experiences. Yes, they're going to fail, but then you have to remember you failed too. You didn't do it perfectly, and neither will they. But if you don't let them have the opportunity, they never will. And what happens then is you slow down the business growth, because that person is losing their own growth. And so that's how this all goes. But people who have a poor job delegating, they have control issues, they micromanage, is because they think they can do it better than other people, and other people can't do it as well as them. But they don't remember the time when they couldn't do it as well.
That they couldn't, exactly.
They conveniently forget that
Mhm.
And so that becomes the problem, right? And it's constantly, you have to train people, and the key thing that you see in research is how people develop and grow is not just learning the skill, it's applying it and actually
Absolutely, yes.
getting the experience. And that requires people to fail. That requires people to learn from their mistakes. It is not going to be perfect. It never is. And I think as a leader, we have to remember it's about empowering people, learning, going back and looking to see what we could do better, doing that, and then moving the organization forward, as a whole, rather than sitting there to yourself and saying, well, I could have done that better, and then doing it, and then not allowing the person ever to actually really get better.
Yes, exactly. Moving on to the next question. So the workplace scenario has completely shifted to hybrid models where work from home is almost the norm. So what kind of challenges do you see in such remote working teams, and how do you think we're going to evolve in that space?
Well, I think one of the challenges is, teamwork, keeping the relationships up. I think motivation, I think learning how to manage the work, getting down to schedules, collaboration, right? And I think just working together in a place now where we're not all together anymore, right? Which is becoming challenging. Now, for companies that have always been remote, it's a little bit different. But most organizations, there are people that are together or get together that now don't. And so that becomes a difficult thing, right? When COVID first happening and people working remote, when your purpose is survival, it's much easier to keep people together because everyone's worried about if they're going to live or if they're going to die. But after a period right now, what you're finding is, yes, are people concerned? Of course, but it's not at the level it was before because people are getting what they call COVID fatigue about having to worry about it all the time, right? Now that's why you're seeing some of the numbers go up, is because people are like, I have to have some social contact with people. I can't be stuck in my house, my apartment, or where I'm currently living at by myself all the time. So you have to be really vigilant in coming up with a strategic plan to keep that going and to do activities that you can keep people together and you can keep them motivated, trust them, right? And I think then it also requires leaders to do one-on-ones with their employees differently, help them manage their career skill sets and develop them, and really try to keep the whole team together and include everyone when they're having conversations and group dialogues together. So a lot of this really is about the teamwork, cohesion, and how are we working on the skills that'll be necessary for us to develop when we can't touch each other, we can't get together, and we're not exactly sure when that might be. And when you're dealing with all of those things, that becomes a problem, because then if you're sitting at home and your purpose now, number one, is not COVID, but you're worrying about, your family or about other things that are going on or about what you're going to have for dinner, right? All those things come through your mind. You start to get more distracted, and that becomes harder and harder. So it's, I think, managing all of this in your head, saying, well, 2021 most likely is going to be completely remote, right? 2022 is much more likely when we might be able to return to the workforce. Or if we have a hybrid model, the challenge is, how do we keep those people together safe in the workplace without spreading it, right? And then how do we keep those people together with the people they have to now just be on video with as a collective group? And so, things that you can do, like our peer recognition, right? Setting up ways for you to recognize your own peers, which is also a really helpful way of doing this. And I told people a couple easy ways, or just, you can go around a group like once a month and thank one person on your team for helping you, and tell them, I'm grateful for you for helping me on this project. Here's what you did, and here's the impact that it made. And another way you could do the same thing is give everyone 5 minutes on your team a chance to email or text someone who's not in the room and thank them for helping you, right? Because that makes people feel appreciated and cared for, and it's free. it costs you nothing but 5 minutes, and
Exactly.
the impact it makes is shown research-wise pretty significant on increasing productivity. So I think you just have to think out of the box. You have to think creatively on how you can make people feel good, treat them well, and keep them connected, and try and do things differently than you would have done pre-COVID doing it now.
Yeah.
And then I think you can be successful. I think otherwise what you're going to find is people are getting much more distracted in 2021, even than they were in 2020, because they're
Yes.
getting sick of just living in this environment and being cut off from other
Absolutely.
humans.
Yes, yes, yes. And Jason, I feel like these are little things, but when put together, they make such a difference. And I'm really glad that you spoke about them today. Lastly, Jason, do you have any sound bites for our viewers and listeners?
You know, I mean, a company is just full of human beings. And, you know, I just got off the phone with a client, and they were talking about the business, and they were like, well, our business practices are great. Our processes have never been better. But the challenge we have in half our business is a lot of the people aren't getting along. They're not communicating, and they're not working together as a group. And that's the biggest problem we have in the organization. And I would challenge everyone listening to me that that is probably the same problem the organization is having. And whether you're a leader, a manager, or an employee, all of this affects you, because in today's world, your performance alone is not enough. You have to have the people around you performing well.
Absolutely.
So you have to lift them up. Even if you're an assistant in the company, you can't wait around. You have to be proactive and lift those people around you, because your performance and your financial well-being depends on them, not just on you. So
Absolutely.
I think when you start to take that outlook, you be much more proactive, and you're thinking about ways that you can impact other people around you. And I think you'll see that this isn't just about only the people, this is about the business, right? This is about profit, loss, top and bottom line in the business. And these all things are connected. And so that's where I would say, take action, treat people well, have some empathy, ask questions, be curious, and focus on building great relationships with the people around you.
Absolutely, Jason. That was wonderful. So thank you so much for speaking with us. It was a very great conversation. And I wish you and your business all the success in the world.
Well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.